Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are back with another body painting video, and today I had this idea that I wanted to talk to you about, but I wasn't sure the best way to execute it. So I was thinking about it, and I thought that we could talk about how to paint black clothing. And the reason why I want to specifically do that is because it starts to mention a method that I've talked about several times in these videos, which is how I think it's best to kind of like highlight and shade using specific colors, and I really want to show that in action. And if you've been watching my videos, I talk about this method where I tell you to use a mid-tone and then a couple shades darker and a couple shades lighter, instead of just going in straight with like the main color black and white. And so I want to show you what exactly that means in specifically with black clothing, because I think that that kind of puts the point across really well. So we're going to learn how to paint black clothing. I'm not going to do my entire chest because that's a lot to remove. So we're just going to kind of create like a little like top section here so you can kind of get the gist of what I mean. But we'll just get right into it. Because we're doing black clothing, you're going to think of black on like a color scale, okay? You're going to see that there's gray in the middle and then black and then white on the other side. And so when you're doing any type of clothing or anything, I always try to think of that kind of mindset. So if you think of blue, there's dark blue at one end, like dark blue, almost black, a mid-tone blue, like a sky blue, and then white, or like a dark purple, a lavender, and then like a light purple. That's how I kind of like to think of colors when I'm painting. So I'm going to do two different sides. I'm going to show you what happens when you go in with just literally black, white, you know, just that, and then this whole mid-tone color idea. I'm just going to go in and we're just basically going to create, like, I'm going to show you how to create just kind of like a top with like a little bit of like a shoulder accent and a collar. For some reason that for me seems to work really well in showing you details. So I'm, for this side, just going in with straight black. You want a black t-shirt? We're just going to paint it black, all right? That's the best way that I can... I'm going to try my best to, like, process my thoughts through this. Because I've been doing this so long, it kind of just comes, like, naturally to me. But if you think about it, we're just going to go in with straight black paint. Let me grab a little bit of a bigger brush now that I've, like, established a spot. And see, what already makes this difficult is you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to add a collar, like how am I going to shade the collar if I'm just using black paint? This is where you run into your kind of issues of just going in straight with like your main color. You're not going to be able to create much depth because you're just using the pretty much the darkest shade first, and you're not able to like build color. So I'm just going to get an even black base because, again, you're like, oh, I just want like a black little topped shirt accent. We'll just paint it black. So, again, you run into immediate issue. How the heck do you shade this? You can't. So that's it. While we let this dry, we're going to move on to the other side real quick. And we're going to start with our mid-tone color, which is gray. I'm using Storm Cloud by Mehron. It's my fave. And I'm going to lay down basically the exact same line. I'm honestly not too worried about being super particular about this just because I'm just trying to demonstrate like a concept. Okay, so we can already see that there's going to be a little bit of a difference, okay? This side you have a lot of room to add that depth, add those shadows and highlights. This one you can pretty much only highlight because you went in straight with black. When you think about black clothing, you think, oh, it needs to be black. But that's not it, because there also needs to be some highlighting to it, because like light's going to hit it and it's going to make certain areas a little bit brighter. So that's why I always say start with your mid-tone color, okay? I will show you pretty much what you can do on the other side. So we're going to add some little clothing textures. Like I said, we're going to do a cute little collar, okay? There's our cute little collar, right? And then, like, you know, the shirts have, like, that little kind of ridge along your shoulder. And let's just say that you want to add a couple more little highlights, you know, some things that you've learned along the way. I'm going with actually kind of a fluffy brush for this. And let's just say, like, you know, you want to highlight your shoulder a little bit, where the light will hit it. Like we've learned in the previous video about adding some highlighting on your collar. I'm not going to obviously just stick with like these lines. I just want to show you what adding a little bit more to your paint does. And again, where like the light would hit the very top of your collar because that's where the material is above your skin. And like you have your collarbone. I always try to follow the natural contours of my body. My collarbones aren't very prominent, so I like to like suck my body in, and then you'll find it. If you're like me, and yours aren't noticeable, just kind of like turtle shell yourself, and then you're able to find them. And I'm just gonna kind of use my finger to blend a little bit, and then we'll just add some here. A lot of the times I will just randomly add marks because I've told you guys, the more kind of chaotic something is, the more unnatural your movements are, the more natural it tends to look because you're not like putting them in specific lines. So we're just gonna add some there. I will sometimes use my finger just to like pat things out. This is so difficult because I'm trying to realize that I can't add shading, so we're probably just gonna stick with that if I'm honest. There's our black t-shirt. Okay, on that side. You see how, yeah, it looks like a black t-shirt, but it's also super one-dimensional. And that's why I like to do this method. So let's just get into this side, okay? So our mid-tone color is gray. We're gonna start working a little bit further down. So you're going to start at mid-tone gray. I'm going to start taking a darker gray first. This darker gray, again, we're going to follow kind of what we did on the other side, so it does look as similar as I can make it. But you see how I have not gone in with black yet? It's because I'm going to work my way down. So we're going to do that. Then this is where I'm applying shadows first. So we have that like initial kind of shadow down. You see how we had a highlight on our collarbone? I'm gonna want to add shadows to my collarbone before I highlight it. I can't add shadows here, so it just kind of looks like a weird line. This is where you're gonna start creating shadows with the eyeshadow. Shadows with the eyeshadow. So I'm gonna take a fluffy brush and again, turtle myself a little bit. And I'm going to go underneath and above, and I'm also going to follow the natural shadow right here of my body. And I always kind of just like to make kind of harsh lines first, and then we'll obviously work our way. I'm also going to start taking that and bringing the shadow behind here. A couple videos ago I did the collar video and I showed you guys that you needed to like focus on the shading back here because like this part of your body is darker than this part. So that's exactly what I'm going to do with the dark gray eyeshadow here. I'm going to take a bigger fluffy brush and I'm just going to start working my shadow this way. As much as I really want to just go in with black right now, I want to start building it up. You have to be a little bit patient about where you put your paint. Because again, I know that you want to like immediately start using black, but I promise it's worth it to build your shadows and your highlights before you immediately go in with just like black and white. I had to learn that the hard way. And by the hard way, I just mean having paints not looking as great as they could because I just so badly wanted to use black and white. So we're gonna just blend it in. I, again, am a mixed medium person. I love to use eyeshadow with my body paints. I find that it makes them look really kind of like realistic and cool. So that's my way of doing it. And then I'm going to just kind of shade a little bit. We're gonna bring this down so it's not just like a plain line. And then we're going to blend down this. This is where, again, we're going to take in kind of the tips from that collar video. And we're gonna start working our way, making that look a little bit more real. So see why it's important to kind of start with a middle color, because you can add details that you're not able to add if you just go in straight with the color. I am not able to add any form of fabric texture to this side because there is no shading. Shading, I think personally, is almost more important than highlighting. Giving yourself the opportunity to add shadows creates so much depth that you just can't get from highlighting. And that kind of is proven here. Highlighting's super great, but when you have nothing to contrast it, it doesn't look that great. So I'm just going in with like a smaller brush and just adding detail. Because all of the detail I'm adding is just shadows. And I like to use various brushes because you're able to get different textures with them. So the fluffy brush, I was able to add some obviously like whiter, almost diffused shadows. We're taking the smaller brush, I'm able to really get in and like I'm using the exact same color, but I'm able to get like darker, sharper lines. So now I'm just going in and just adding some cool little lines. And I know that the shirt is still very gray. Don't worry. At some point I am going to be going in with black and like really going at it. But you're going to see how much more texture you have to your shirt when you're able to finally get to that step. So again, still using the exact same gray. It's just a dark gray eyeshadow. Just a completely different brush, and it just builds an entirely different effect. Also, I know that I'm going to add this line. So I'm actually just going to kind of shade where that line's going to be, because there is going to be some shadow right underneath that line. So I'm just going to place it there. I hope that I'm explaining myself. I'm a visual learner, so that's why I like kind of showing you rather than just talking to you about it. Because I feel like it makes absolutely no sense if I'm like, put this here and then this here, and you have no clue what I mean. Here's where my method gets a little bit interesting. I love using fluffy brushes, okay? So we're gonna take our black paint. I'm just gonna do like 2 little sprays. And I'm gonna start, we're gonna go in with the black. I know, we're doing it. And I'm gonna start, I like to start as far back because if I place it really kind of intensely, you can't really see it. So I like to place the darkest of it here and then start working my way forward. And what I like to do, I'm going to try to show this as best as I can. What I like to do is I love to leave areas of gray peeking through. This is why I like to use fluffy brushes. It makes it a little bit softer. And this is why I love to have like an underpainting of these shadows first, because you can still see them when I create this kind of natural shirt texture and highlighting with the black paint. I'll show you kind of in the front too. So let's see, we're gonna start here. And a little bit kind of goes a long way. So I'm gonna build up this right here. And I'm going to start working where I drew that line. And I love to just go where I've placed the shadows. And I just take my hand. I'm a big fan of this method. Just go for it. Don't even think about it, okay? Don't even think about it. Don't think too much where you're placing your paint. Again, you're going to want to leave kind of little areas of your gray peeking through. So for me, I want it like here. I find that if I think about it too much, I end up just kind of ruining it because my brain was like, well, you should have put it there. You should have put it there. Why didn't you put it there? Instead of just letting your hand figure it out. If you trust yourself, you'll get it. Being an artist is literally just trusting your skill. And I know you're probably like, well, why'd you put all that detail down with the gray eyeshadow? A lot of the times it's also to map out what I'm doing, but for when I leave these moments of the color peeking through, you still have the detail you painted underneath it. It's all just kind of like a layering process. I'm gonna bring this forward. I'm actually going to, the only black that I'm going to add to the collar is back here to really bring that depthness in the back. But I'm actually pretty much only going to leave just the back with paint on. The rest of it, I like that this brings some like highlighting here. So I'm happy that I did that. The black kind of helps create a lot more depth back here. And that's where I'm going to keep layering the paint on, so that it really kind of emphasizes that this is a black shirt. I'm also putting my brush down where it's going to be the darkest and then blending out. So when I add more paint to my brush, I'm putting it down at the darkest shadow so that way I don't kind of mess up this natural texture. I keep putting it here because I know that I'm really going to end up shading there, so I can kind of take it from there and blend around it and it won't look too awful. And then we just use the leftover and just make it look nice and smooth. But again, I'm leaving a lot of these areas of this light gray underneath so that it creates kind of a natural highlight, and I'm not having to go in directly with white everywhere, making it look a little bit more natural. This is where layering is super important. We are going to take a black eyeshadow, okay? And the black eyeshadow is going to layer over this kind of like really dark gray paint we've created with the black paint and create even more depth. So, and again, I'm just taking that thinner brush so I create like a darker line. You don't have to have a ton of products. Honestly, if you have like a good variety of brushes, you can do a lot. More than I think you would realize. And like I said, I'm allowing this mid-tone color to now kind of be its own highlight, which then just makes it look a little bit more real. Again, if you are going for a more like cartoon comic book-esque paint, you will be taking a few different measurements to create your paint. This is just what I find when I want to do realistic clothing. So now I'm using like black. And now I'm able to create such a cool little bit of depth. And again, I'm gonna go back here where I want that like fabric line to be. I'm going to start really shading right there. Black and white are pretty much going to be the last colors that you want to use. As much as it kind of feels natural to do that, that's where you're going to want to go last. I'm actually going to take that fluffy brush. And I'm just going to blend this a little bit more. Something else that you can also do, because you can still add shading to this, is you can just add these little like fabric lines. Fabric lines have a really just kind of organic texture to them. They're not super particular. And so you can add like these little like wavy shadow marks. That's going to look like your shirt is a little bit folded. And again, you can't add that when you've already just gone in with straight up black. And I kind of like to put them in random spots because that's really what they are, is they're very random. This is where you can go in with white next if you want to. I'm going to take a little brush and I'm just going to take a little bit of white paint. And we're going to start highlighting the collar. And I like to keep it very thin, okay? The thinner, the more natural it'll look. I'm gonna do it right at the top. And again, we're gonna leave spaces. I'm not gonna put pressure down the entire time. We're gonna add the highlight of right here, and again, keep it thin. You're gonna use a very light pressure on your hand, and again, just kind of let it organically go. You don't need it to cover every inch of this, okay? And I'm actually gonna wanna highlight some of these little fabric folds as well. I'm gonna use this side. And if you think you did too much, just take your finger and just kind of tap over it. It softens it a little bit. I'm gonna kind of just drag this along. And again, just use your finger to tap it through. If I feel like, because like I feel like this part's a little bit weird, I'm actually just going to take that black, whatever's on the brush, and just kind of like work towards it. So it's not so harsh, if that makes sense. If you want, you can kind of take it and go over these spots that you've left. And again, just take your finger if you need to and just tap over it. Your shoulder is going to have a bit of a highlight because like it sticks out of your body. But that's pretty much the basics, if you can understand what I was saying. So that's pretty much the basics of what it's like working with just your main color, black and white, and then starting with a mid-tone, building up, adding texture, adding shadows, adding highlights, working on the scale of your colors so that you're able to create something a little bit more natural. They both look like a black shirt. I just think this one has a little bit more zhuzh to it than this one. If you do it like this, know that you aren't doing anything wrong. I just want to show you kind of tips and tricks to maybe elevate your clothing a little bit or to elevate your body paint a little bit. If you do have any questions, make sure to leave them down below. Thank you again so much for all of the views and subs lately on my videos. I do really appreciate it. If you did like the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye!